Hello everyone, my name is Kaz, and for today we're going to be, well, pretty much what you see. Gwendolyn is there piddling around in her inventory, and while she does that, and you watch, I'm going to read various stories, excerpts from some books. We'll start us off right away with an excerpt from Bullfinch's Mythology, some mythological stories summarized. This one is from his second book, Chapter 4, Cardarach Briefbras, or Cardarach with the Shrunken Arm. Cardarach was the son of Isen, the beautiful niece of Arthur. He was ignorant of who his father was, till it was discovered in the following manner. When the youth was of proper years to receive the honors of knighthood, King Arthur held a grand court for the purpose of knighting him. On this occasion, a strange knight presented himself and challenged the knights of Arthur's court to exchange blow for blow with him. His proposal was this: to lay his neck on a block for any knight to strike, on condition that, if he survived the blow, the knight should submit in turn to the same experiment. Sir Kay, who was usually ready to accept all challenges, pronounced this wholly unreasonable, and declared that he would not accept it for all the wealth in the world. And when the knight offered his sword, with which the operation was to be performed, no person ventured to accept it till Cardarach, growing angry at the disgrace which was thus incurred by the Round Table, threw aside his mantle and took it. "Do you do this as one of the best knights?" said the stranger. "No," he replied, "but as one of the most foolish." The stranger lays his head upon the block, receives a blow, which sends it rolling from his shoulders, walks after it, picks it up, replaces it with great success, and says he will return when the court shall be assembled next year, and claim his turn. When the anniversary arrived, both parties were punctual to their engagement. Great entreaties were used by the king and queen and the whole court in behalf of Cardarach, but the stranger was inflexible. The young knight laid his head upon the block, and more than once desired him to make an end of the business and not keep him longer in so disagreeable a state of expectation. At last the stranger strikes him gently with the side of the sword, bids him rise, and reveals to him the fact that he is his father, the enchanter Eleoris, and that he gladly owns him for a son, having proved his courage and fidelity to his word. But the favor of enchanters is short-lived and uncertain. Eleoris fell under the influence of a wicked woman who, to satisfy her pique against Cardarach, persuaded the enchanter to fasten on his arm a serpent, which remained there sucking at his flesh and blood, no human skill sufficing either to remove the reptile or alleviate the torments which Cardarach endured. Cardarach was betrothed to Gwymer, sister to his bosom friend Cador, and daughter to the king of Cornwall. As soon as they were informed of his deplorable condition, they set out for Nantes, where Cardarach's castle was, that Gwymer might attend to him. When Cardarach heard of their coming, his first emotion was that of joy and love, but soon he began to fear that the sight of his emaciated form and of his sufferings would disgust Gwymer, and his apprehension became so strong that he departed secretly from Nantes and hid himself in a hermitage. He was sought far and near by the knights of Arthur's court, and Cador made a vow never to desist from the quest till he should have found him. After long wandering, Cador discovered his friend in the hermitage, reduced almost to a skeleton and apparently near his death. All other means of relief having already been tried in vain, Cador at last prevailed on the enchanter Eleoris to disclose the only method which could avail for his rescue. A maiden must be found, his equal in birth and beauty, and loving him better than herself, so that she would expose herself to the same torment to deliver him. 2 vessels were then to be provided, the one filled with sour wine and the other with milk. Cardarach must enter the first, so that the wine should reach his neck, and the maiden must get into the other, and, exposing her bosom upon the edge of the vessel, invite the serpent to forsake the withered flesh of his victim for this fresh and inviting food. The vessels were to be placed 3 feet apart, and as the serpent crossed from one to the other, a knight was to cut him in 2. If he failed in his blow, Cardarach would indeed be delivered, but it would only be to see his fair champion suffering the same cruel and hopeless torment. The sequel may be easily foreseen. Gwymer willingly exposed herself to the perilous adventure, and Cador, with a lucky blow, killed the serpent. The arm, in which Cardarach had suffered so long, recovered its strength but not its shape, in consequence of which he was called Cardarach Briefbras, Cardarach of the Shrunken Arm. Cardarach and Gwymer are the hero and heroine of the Ballad of the Boy and the Mantle, which follows. The Boy and the Mantle. In Carlisle dwelt King Arthur, a prince of passing might, and there maintained his table beset with many a knight. And there he kept with Christmas with mirth and princely cheer, when lo, a strange and cunning boy before him did appear. A kirtle and a mantle the boy had him upon, with brooches, rings, and ouches, full daintily bedone. He had a sash of silk about his middle meet, and thus with seemly courtesy he did King Arthur greet. God speed thee, brave King Arthur, thus feasting in thy bower, and Guinevere, thy goodly queen, that fair and peerless flower. Ye gallant lords and lordlings, I wish you all take heed, lest what ye deem a blooming rose should prove a cankered weed. Then straightway from his bosom a little wand he drew, and with it eke a mantle of wondrous shape and hue. Now have thou here, King Arthur, have this here of me, and give unto thy comely queen, all shapen as you see. No wife it shall become that once hath been to blame, then every knight in Arthur's court sly glanced at his dame. And first came Lady Guinevere, the mantle she must try, this dame she was newfangled, and of a roving eye. When she had taken the mantle, and all with it was clad, from top to toe it shivered down, as though the shears beshred. One while it was too long, another while too short, and wrinkled on the shoulders in most unseemly sort. Now green, now red it seemed, then all of sable hue. Beshrew me, quoth King Arthur, I think that best not true. Down she threw the mantle, no longer would she stay, but storming like a fury to her chamber flung away. She cursed the rascal weaver that had the mantle wrought, and doubly cursed the froward imp who thither had it brought. I had rather live in deserts beneath the greenwood tree, than here, base king, among thy grooms, the sport of them and thee. Sir Kay called forth his lady, and bade her come too near. Yet, dame, if thou be guilty, I pray thou now forbear. This lady, pertly giggling, with forward step came on, and boldly to the little boy, with fearless face, is gone. When she had taken the mantle, with purpose for to wear, it shrunk up to her shoulder, and left her neck all bare. And every merry knight that was in Arthur's court jibed and laughed and flouted to see the pleasant sport. Down she threw the mantle, no longer bold or gay, but with a face all pale and wan to her chamber slunk away. Then forth came an old knight, a pattering o'er his creed, and proffered to the little boy 5 nobles to his meed. And all the time of Christmas plum porridge shall be thine, if thou wilt let my fair lady within the mantle shine. A saint his lady seemed, with steep demur and slow, and gravely to the mantle with mincing face doth go. When she the same had taken, that was so fine and thin, it shrivelled all about her, and showed her dainty skin. Ah, little did her mincing or his long prayers bestead, she had no more hung on her than a tassel and a thread. Down she threw the mantle with terror and dismay, and with a face of scarlet to her chamber hied away. Sir Cradock called his lady, and bade her come too near. Come win this mantle, lady, and do me credit here. Come win this mantle, lady, for now it shall be thine, if thou hast never done amiss, since first I made thee mine. The lady, gently blushing, with modest grace came on, and now to try the wondrous charm courageously is gone. When she had taken the mantle and put it on her back, about the hem it seemed to wrinkle and to crack. Lie still, she cried, O mantle, and shame me not for naught. I'll freely own whatever amiss or blameful I have wrought. I once kissed Sir Cradock beneath the greenwood tree. I once kissed Sir Cradock's mouth before he married me. When she had thus her shriven and her worst fault had told, the mantle soon became her right comely as it should. Most rich and fair of colour, like gold it glittering shone, and much the knight in Arthur's court admired her every one. The ballad goes on to tell of 2 more trials of a similar kind made by means of a boar's head and a drinking horn, in both of which the result was equally favourable to the first, to Sir Cradock and his lady. It then concludes as follows. Thus boar's head, horn, and mantle were the fair couple's meed, and all such constant lovers, God send them well to speed. From a letter of Mr. Isaac Newton, professor of mathematics in the University of Cambridge, containing his new theory about light and colors. Sir, to perform my late promise to you, I shall without further ceremony acquaint you that in the beginning of the year 1666, at which time I applied myself to the grinding of optic glasses of other figures than spherical, I procured me a triangular glass prism to try therewith the celebrated phenomena of colors. And in order thereto, having darkened my chamber and made a small hole in my window shuts to let in a convenient quantity of the sun's light, I placed my prism at his entrance, that it might thereby refracted to the opposite wall. It was at first a very pleasing divertisement to the view, the vivid and intense colors produced thereby, but after a while, applying myself to consider them more circumspectly, I became surprised to see them in oblong form, which, according to the received laws of refraction I expected, should have been circular. They were terminated at the edges with straight lines, but at the ends, the decay of the light was so gradual that it was difficult to determine justly what was their figure, yet they seemed semicircular. Comparing the length of this colored spectrum to its breadth, I found it about 5 times greater, a disproportion so extravagant that it excited me to a more than ordinary curiosity of examining from whence it might proceed. I could scarce think that the various thickness of the glass, or the termination of the window or darkness, could have any influence on light to produce such an effect, yet I thought it not amiss first to examine those circumstances, and so tried that what would happen by transmitting light through parts of the glass of diverse thickness, or through holes in the window of diverse bigness, or by setting the prism without so that the light might pass through it and be refracted before it was terminated by the hole. But I found none of these circumstances material. The fashion of the colors was in all these cases the same. Then I suspected whether any unevenness in the glass or other contingent irregularity these colors might thus be dilated. And to try this, I took another prism like the former, and so placed it that the light passing through them both might be refracted contrary ways, and so by the latter returned into that course from which the former had diverted it. For by this means I thought the regular effects of the first prism would be destroyed by the second prism, but the irregular ones more augmented by the multiplicity of refractions. The event was that the light which by the first prism was diffused into an oblong form was by the second reduced into an orbicular one, which was with as much regularity as when it did not at all pass through them. So that, whatever was the cause of that length, 'twas not any contingent irregularity. The gradual removal of these suspicions at length led me to the experimentum crucis, which was this. I took 2 boards and placed one of them close behind the prism at the window so that the light might pass through a small hole made in it for the purpose and fall on the other board, which I placed about 12 feet distance, having first made a small hole in it also for some of the incident light to pass through. Then I placed another prism behind this second board so that the light projected through both of the boards might pass through that also, and be again refracted before it arrived at the wall. This done, I took the first prism in my hand and turned it to and fro slowly about its axis, so much as to make the several parts of the image cast on the second board successively pass through the hole in it, that I might observe to what places on the wall the second prism would refract them. And I saw, by the variation of those places, that the light tending to that end of the image towards which the refractions of the first prism was made did in the second prism suffer a refraction considerably greater than the light tending to the other end. And so the true cause of the length of the image was detected to be no other than that light consists of rays differently refrangible, which, without any respect to a difference in their incidence, were, according to their degrees of refrangibility, transmitted towards divers parts of the wall. I shall now proceed to acquaint you with another more notable deformity in its rays, wherein the origin of colors is unfolded, concerning which I shall lay down the doctrine first, and then for its examination give you an instance or 2 of the experiments as a specimen of the rest. The doctrine you will find comprehended and illustrated in the following propositions. 1. As the rays of light differ in degrees of refrangibility, so they also differ in their disposition to exhibit this or that particular color. Colors are not qualifications of light derived from refractions or reflections of natural bodies, as 'tis generally believed, but original and connate properties, which in divers rays are diverse. Some rays are disposed to exhibit a red color and no other, some a yellow and no other, some a green and no other, and so of the rest. Nor are there only rays proper and particular to the more eminent colors, but even to all their intermediate gradations. 2. To the same degree of refrangibility ever belongs the same color, and to the same color ever belongs the same degree of refrangibility. The least refrangible rays are all disposed to exhibit a red color, and contrarily, those rays which are disposed to exhibit a red color are all the least refrangible. So the most refrangible rays are all disposed to exhibit a deep violet color, and contrarily, those which are apt to exhibit such a violet color are all the most refrangible. And so to all the intermediate colors in a continued series belong indeterminate degrees of refrangibility. And this analogy twixt the colors and refrangibility is very precise and strict, the rays always either agreeing in both or proportionally disagreeing in both. 3. The species of color and degree of refrangibility proper to any particular sort of rays is not mutable by refraction nor by reflection from natural bodies nor by any other cause that I could yet observe. When any one sort of rays have been parted from those other kinds, it hath afterwards obstinately retained its color, notwithstanding my utmost endeavors to change it. I have refracted it with prisms and reflected it with bodies which in daylight were of other colors. I have intercepted it with colored film of air interceding to compressed plates of glass, transmitted it through colored mediums, and through mediums irradiated with other sorts of rays, and diversely terminated it, and yet could never produce any new color out of it. I would, by contracting our dilating, become more brisk or faint by the loss of many rays, in some cases very obscure and dark, but I could never see it change in species. 4. Yet seeming transmutations of colors may be made, where there is any mixture of diverse sorts of rays. For in such mixtures the component colors appear not, but by their mutual allaying each other constitute a middling color. And therefore, if by refraction any other the aforesaid causes the deformed rays latent in such a mixture be separated, there shall emerge colors different from the color of the composition, which colors are not new generated, but only made apparent by being parted, for if they be again entirely mixed and blended together, they will again compose that color for which they did before such separation. And for the same reason, transmutations made by the convening of diverse colors are not real, for when the deformed rays are again severed, they will exhibit the very same colors which they did before they entered the composition. As you see, blue and yellow powders, when finely mixed, appear to be to the naked eye green, and yet the colors of the component corpuscles are not thereby transmuted, but only blended. For, when viewed with a good microscope, they still appear blue and yellow interspersedly. 5. There are therefore two sorts of colors, the one original and simple, the other compounded of these. The original or primary colors are red, yellow, green, blue, and violet purple, together with orange, indigo, and an indefinite variety of indeterminate graduations. 6. The same colors in specie with these primary ones may also be produced by composition, where a mixture of yellow and blue makes green, of red and yellow makes orange, of orange and yellowish green makes yellow, and in general in any two colors be mixed which, in the series of those generated by the prism, are not too far distant from one another, they by their mutual alloy compounded that color which in said series appeareth in midway between them. But those which are situated at too great a distance do not so. Orange and indigo produce not the intermediate green, nor scarlet and green the intermediate yellow. 7. But the most surprising and wonderful composition was that of whiteness. There is no one sort of rays which can alone exhibit this. 'Tis ever compounded, and to its composition are requisite all the aforesaid primary colors mixed in a due proportion. I have often with admiration beheld that, all the colors of the prism being made to converge and thereby be again mixed as they were in the light before it was incident upon the prism, reproduced light, entirely and perfectly white, and not at all sensibly differing from a direct light of the sun, unless when the glasses I were used were not sufficiently clear, for then they would a little incline it to their colors. 8. Hence, therefore, it comes to pass that the whiteness is the usual color of light, for light is a confused aggregate of rays, endued with all sorts of colors, as they are promiscuously darted from the various parts of luminous bodies. And of such a confused aggregate, as I said, is generated whiteness, if there be a due proportion of the ingredients, but if any one predominate, the light must incline to that color, as it happens in the blue flame of brimstone, the yellow flame of the candle, and the various colors of the fixed stars. 9. These things consider the manner how colors are produced by the prism is evident, for the rays constituting the incident light, since those which differ in the color proportionality differ in refrangibility. They, by their unequal refractions, must be severed and dispersed into an oblong form in an orderly succession from the least refracted scarlet to the most refracted violet. And for the same reason it is that objects, when looked upon through a prism, appear colored. For the difform rays, by their unequal refractions, are made to diverge towards several parts of the retina, and there express the images of the color of things colored, as in the former case they did the sun's image upon the wall, and by this inequality of refractions they become not only colored, but also very confused and indistinct. 10. Why the colors of the rainbow appear in falling drops of rain is also from here evident, for those drops which refract the rays disposed to appear purple in greatest quantity to the spectator's eye refract the rays in other sorts so much less as to make them pass beside it. And such are the drops on the inside of the primary bow and on the outside of the secondary or exterior one. So those drops which refract in the greatest plenty the rays apt to appear red towards the spectator's eye, refract those other sorts so much more as to make them pass beside it, and such are the drops on the exterior part of the primary and interior part of the secondary bow. 13. And I add more instances of this nature, but I shall conclude with this general one, that the colors of all natural bodies have no other origin than this. They are variously qualified to reflect one sort of light in greater plenty than another, and this I have experimented in a dark room by illuminating those bodies with uncompounded light of diverse colors. For by that means any body may be made to appear of any color. They have there no appropriate color, but ever appear of the color that the light cast upon them, but yet with this difference, that they are most brisk and vivid in the light of their own daylight color. Minimum appeareth there of any color indifferently which 'tis illustrated, but yet most luminous in red, and so Bizet appeareth indifferently in any color from which 'tis illustrated, but yet most luminous in blue. And therefore minimum reflecteth the rays of any color, but most copiously those endued with red, and consequently that when illustrated with daylight, that is, with all sorts of rays promiscuously blended, those qualified with red shall abound most in the reflected light, and by their prevalence cause it to appear that of color. And for the same reason Bizet reflecting blue most copiously shall appear blue by the excess of those rays in its reflected light, and the like of other bodies. And that this is the entire and adequate cause of their colors is manifest, because they have no power to change or alter the colors of any sort of rays incident apart, but put on all colors indifferently which with they are enlightened. These things being so, it can no longer be disputed whether there be colors in the dark, nor whether they be qualities of the objects we see, no, nor perhaps whether light be a body. For since these colors are qualities of light, having its rays for the entire and immediate subject, how can we think those rays qualities also, unless one quality may be subject of and sustain another, which in effect is to call it substance? We should not know bodies for substances were it not for their sensible qualities, and the principle of those being now found due to something else, we have as good reason to believe that to be a substance also. Besides, who ever thought any quality to be a heterogeneous aggregate, such as light is discovered to be, but to determine more absolutely what light is, after what manner refracted, and by what modes or actions it produceth in our minds the phantasms of colors, is not so easy, and I shall mingle conjectures with certainties, and I shall not mingle conjectures with certainties.